Yeah, thank you, Christopher. And I recall that conversation quite well. We were sitting at a place that's now closed called Fleming's in Beverly Hills around happy hour, and we kept talking. I said you can't scale time, and how do you duplicate? And there's a lot of resonance in what you and I talked about, Christopher, and where that came from. So my arc of interest, I call it the entrepreneur. I've never had a job. I'm technically unhirable, and I wear that as a badge of honor now. But when I was going to college, I couldn't get hired. I kept going through these assessment tests and never getting callbacks. And just by default, I sort of started and stumbled into entrepreneurism. So I started my own retail stores in college selling watches. Christopher knows I'm a big watch fan. Got other phones going in the office here. Sorry about that. It's too far away. But when I was 20, I started an infomercial. So I learned a little bit about direct response, and it was kind of cool. You see yourself on the television at 2 a.m, and an 800 service took our orders. And twice a week, my partner and I picked up checks and mailing labels. So I was in college making $25,000 a week doing nothing. But again, you kind of learn these things. People with bad credit didn't have a way to pay. And so we had all these books getting returned, and the business sort of was this great supernova of 25 grand a week for 90 days and then losing $10,000 a month. But in those 90 days, I bought a Porsche 924 and an aquarium with fish in it. And I realized financing is short term. You have to plan a little bit better. But the arc really started when I was 22. I went to work at Travelers Group. And it was the early days of Sandy Weil, Pete Dawkins, Jamie Dimon, these big guys. And I was selling life insurance, mutual funds, and mortgages, full commission at night. Tough business. And so we were in this, what I call a sales cult. And I still to this day believe we were a full-on sales cult. We were all former professional athletes. But over 6.5 years, I read 357 books. And people go, oh, that's a lot. It's not. It was one book per week. So the goal was to read a book, dissect the elements, learn a skill, and then teach my sales force a new skill every week. It's called stacking. And so over the course of time, I ended up developing, and that's sort of what's over my shoulder here. I've got a 10-step program called a Bullseye Belief System. And by program, I'm not a consultant. I don't want to be a professional public speaker anymore. I've done that. But I have a 10-step program that is a culmination of hundreds of books and thousands of hours, all down to 10 implementable practical steps. And I've got this kind of unique ability to deconstruct problems. And that's kind of what I did with Chris. So fast forward 96, I wanted to get out of financial services. And again, Stephen Covey, Begin with the End in Mind, now what I call Design Your Destiny. I wanted to write a book, talk on stage, cash checks. I wanted somebody to build a website. I'd heard of this website thing, didn't know how it worked. And I want somebody to build a website, process credit card orders, send me checks and mailing labels, just like my 800 service. I wanted to talk on stage and cash checks. I'm good at talking, cashing. I suck at everything else in between. And in 96, it didn't exist. I went to 10 people I know, which we were taught to do in sales. Who do you know can solve this problem? And interesting people came back. Jim Rome, many of you guys may know Jim Rome, Mark Victor Hansen. I mean, we were around the legends of all these early guys. Tom Hopkins. I used to pick Tony Robbins up in his early days when he wrote his first book, Unlimited Power. So I grew up within this sales cult. And I took my first company, we started in 96. I took it public in 99, close to $1 billion. It's what went on to become PayPal. And so, as Chris was saying, I've started 5 companies where I'm the first one in the world to have ever done something, which is interesting when they work and sometimes not so much. 3 of them have gone public. But again, the manifestation of how I create the companies is usually trying to solve a problem that I want solved. I approach the company by asking one simple question. Everything with me is simple questions. If you start a new company, the question you always ask is, why won't this work? And I would challenge people like, oh, what question should you ask? How's it going to make money? What? No. You want to go into every circumstance soliciting negative information in a positive way. And by asking, why won't this work? What am I doing wrong? What am I missing? Who's my competition? If you can do that in a friendly or mentor advisor environment, you get real critical insights that makes your company better. And so I had enterprise software, homeland security. We took a mobile company public, tried to take on Instagram, didn't work. I still think I have a better product. One of these days it might work. We don't give up on our ideas. And currently I'm in a fintech blockchain platform. I'm the only worldwide multi-award winning. We've won 8 contests around the world in blockchain startup contests. And I joke in closing, Christopher, with this. So people go, oh, why do you win so many contests? I said, it's easy. 3, again, the power of 3. Number 1, Moneta Pro is a great idea. It's a fintech, $17 trillion platform. 2, I'm a professionally trained speaker and I'm proud of it. I spent thousands and thousands of hours working on planned pauses, crutch words, elimination of intonations. And then I joke the self-deprecating. The third reason I won so many contests is I'm up against a bunch of Russian engineers and guys who can't speak very good English. When you're in a startup contest on stage and you have great presentation and other people can't speak English very well, you tend to win contests by, no fault of your own. So Christopher, I appreciate it. You and I have been friends a long time. Obviously, anything I can always do to help, I will do so. And with that, I don't know if I'm going to get pelted off the stage with tomatoes or ask good questions, but I'm ready to go.
Awesome, Stephen. Thank you so much for that. Again, let's just talk about your communication skills. Recently, Stephen gave a talk on blockchain. And whether you know blockchain or not, he did it in such a concise, clear, and confident way that I was so blown away because, again, so many things. Just imagine blockchain is like the internet, meaning 20 plus years ago, no one had a clue. And so blockchain is similar in that people are all scared and afraid and anxious. But Stephen does a great job at communicating. So let's just first talk more about how do you feel, just as you said, the first question you ask about building a company is asking what can go wrong. Well, as a speaker, all of our members here, they're all speakers in different stages. What's the foundational question that you ask yourself to be a better speaker?
To be a better speaker. Wow. Well, I don't know if it's a question. And again, you guys can see the bullseye guy. I have a podcast out there and I'm not here to promote anything. I don't sell anything. I like sharing content. It's the old adage, eat like a bird, poop like an elephant. A bird eats a third of its weight per day, and an elephant, as you can imagine, the visual kind of gives a lot back. So I have on my podcast, I have the top 10 attributes that make you a better speaker. And I don't know if it's any one, but I'll share some with you that I think are interesting that any one of you can do. And then I'll share a few that I learned that take more skill set, but are fascinating for the implication. And one of the things we did early on is we filmed ourselves. And if you just film yourself, it's hard to be critical. When you're filming with other people, one of the things you work on are planned pauses. Planned pauses are difficult. You tell somebody, I want you to pause 1.2 seconds. And you think, why 1.2? If you wait 1.5, people think you forgot what you're going to say. If you go under a second, it doesn't seem like a pause. But the challenge as a speaker is, if I say pause 1.2 seconds, when you tape yourself, you think in your mind, you pause forever. To me, that single pause there seems like a long time. That was less than half a second. So not only do you want to tape yourself, you want to time your pauses. You want to learn your intonations. You want to watch your crutch words. Mentally, I know 90 seconds ago, I just said the word so, and I wish I wouldn't have. So I just said it again. I catch my own crutch words. You want to be able to catch your crutch words, watch your intonations, time yourself, and get really, really good at delivering a message with voice, pauses, voice fluctuations. Those are the fun ones. The interesting ones, for instance, I learned a thing called left-right brain symmetry. And again, what I develop is like concentric circles. Left-right brain symmetry is the left side of your brain is the logical, the right side are the creatives. And if I could see everybody, I would ask, have you heard of that? And a few people down here are shaking their head. Well, what you realize when you have an audience in front of you, you don't know which ones are logics, which are creatives. And you can assume half the audience may be one or the other. What do? How do you articulate a better message to the audience? Well, I thought about it. I went, well, if I know half is left and half is right and logics and creatives, If I want to make a logical point in my speech, I'm talking data, I'm talking analytics, I'm talking things that are logical. I will walk to this side, to the right. It's called stage right. I'm not an actor. Stage left or right. Whichever one forces the audience to look to their right accesses the logical part of their brain. If I move to one side of the stage and stand there while I'm making my logic points, I connect to all of the logics in the rooms. I also connect to the creatives who by default are forced to access the logic part of their hemisphere. If I want to make big, sweeping, goal setting, storytelling, emotional resonance, I'll move to the other side of the stage and stand and pause and tell my story where I'm accessing the creative hemisphere. If I want to make a point of emphasis, I will step forward into the audience, learning when to step forward, when to walk down the stage into the audience, what side of the stage to come from. If you're trying to drive home a logical point and you walk down the stage, that drives home the logic foundation. If it's the creative, emotional side and you're trying to raise the elevation of emotion, what side of the stage you come down on is interesting. And then one of the things I learned, any of you that are public speakers in big audiences, even small ones, even a Zoom, we tend to give a lot of energy. We project, we want to give to ourselves and of ourselves. What the audience is doing is sitting there going, give me more. If you've got 50, 80, 100, 200 people, they are sucking the energy out of you. They're like people with negative battery and jumper cables going, all right, what have you got? You're on stage. I paid to be here. You better be good. And that energy can be very draining because we want to give of ourselves. And I learned a trick. I think it works, whether you do or not. I'm not sure. And then Christopher, I'll finish up in this. This concept of energy to me was always fascinating. How do you project energy? There's great stories of Kennedy when he walked on stage all downtrodden and sullen, and then he would bring his energy up. You can raise your energy level when you learn how to do that, and raise energy and project and pull energy to project out. I wanted energy coming back, and I learned simple tricks. I would ask questions. How many of you have been to a garage sale? How many of you have bought something on Amazon? And it's not just a simple question. It's the trick of raising your hand as you're asking the question. What happens is the audience jolts up. They don't know. Some are paying attention, raise their hands. Others aren't. And they see everybody else raising their hand. And they just fall in line and raise their hand too. It's what Tony Robbins says. You're activating and energizing the crowd. But more than that, if you have 500, 1,000, 3,000, 10,000 people raising their hand, and if you imagine when they do that, waves of energy are now coming at you on the stage. This is what I used to teach my team when they would say, oh, I'm so tired. I said, just imagine everybody when they raise their hand, just visualize waves of positive energy just crashing over you and revitalizing you. And again, Christopher, it's not any one thing. I've got 10 tips, and some are esoteric that I've created on my own that I think work, and others are very tactical, but all of them combined, I think, help.
Awesome, Stephen. Raise your hand if you're getting value from Stephen right now. All right, cool. So that's the speaking side. And just so you know, Stephen is at the highest caliber of speakers, meaning he's not using fillers. He has a certain intonation. He understands how to explain things very clearly, because again, assume that people don't care what you're saying. You have to catch their attention first. How he talked about his macro understanding, his numbers, the companies he had, he did it in a very concise fashion. But then he explained to you very simply, look, I'm not here to sell you something. He has the visuals in the background conveying authority, but all the things are specific, intentional, and purposeful. So remember, every single time you're on screen, it's your chance to convey to them who you are. In Stephen's case, he does an exceptional job of not just sharing with what he does and what he knows how to do, but all the body language, what he's wearing. He's always a very polished guy. Even the whole watch thing. He's the one that told me about these Richard Milles watches, which cost $200,000. So if you want to meet a guy or gal that is a multimillionaire and he or she's wearing a Richard Milles watch, those are things you need to understand if you want to cater to the more higher end financial crowd, right?
It's funny, Christopher, when I slid out of screen earlier when you were starting, I felt naked. I'm like, oh, where's my watch? Because I talk like this and I know I needed it, and I'm still wearing my blue from 4th of July and my matching watch and the cufflinks, and I was afraid if I went like this, I'd feel naked. Make it, yeah, it's all a process and a plan to be present in those moments and not be distracted and thinking of things.
And also knowing what makes you feel comfortable and confident, right? Like I always wear a blue shirt too. It conveys a warmth and loyalty and whatnot, but all these things matter. You want to have the style, but also substance. And Stephen is amazing at that. Now let's talk about money, because this is all about millionaire secrets. And for me, even as a kid, my uncle was a millionaire. My grandfather was fairly well off. So I saw that it's possible. So when I started making my own money, it wasn't something like, oh, I didn't never knew it was possible. I already knew it was possible. And then when I started meeting multimillionaires and I had a mentor who made $100 million and I have billionaire friends, then you start seeing what is possible. So for you, Stephen, I'm curious, because you didn't grow up with means, right? Like you grew up with a fairly modest upbringing. So share with us on our call. Our members are from all around the world. When did you have an understanding, desire, or even like, wow, this might be possible for me to make money? Like, was there a certain moment or a time, or tell us about that?
Well, I appreciate the question, Christopher. It was a multitude of things, a multiplicity. One, I remember, and again, I don't know how I'm wired this way. I remember my mom, when I was in college, took me to a gentleman who I believe his name was Peter, and he was a corporate recruiter. And he was giving me a chance because I was somewhat articulate, I guess, in college. This was before I really started the self journey of getting better. And I remember sitting there with my mom. She wanted to slap me. My mom's former military. So when Christopher said, not really means, my real dad, military, my mom and dad were divorced. I actually learned my dad died of alcoholism a couple years ago, which was this great enlightening to me that I'm like, oh, I have an addiction gene. No wonder I work all the time. I'm like an addict holding a beer, but I have to hold a cell phone or my computer. But I remember sitting in this meeting, and the guy was telling me I could make $75,000 or $80,000 a year as a corporate recruiter. This is out of college, and this is in the 80s, I think. I'm that old. And I asked him a question. There was two questions. One, I turned to him and said, well, Peter, if I can ask, how much do you make? And he goes, I make $365,000. Thought, wow. Question two, will I ever be able to make more than you if I work here? Well, of course not. I'm the owner. I turned to my mom. I said, I'm just not interested. And again, I'm in college. I'm bussing tables. It wasn't that I had some grand illusion. It was just, if I want to work hard and I'm a hard worker, why not swing for the fences? Why not go for something big? And if you don't make it and fall short, it might not be too bad. That being said, I will share my first big mistake, and this will be part of the bullseye belief system. It's about being specific. And I love a live audience. I don't think Christopher will be able to do this here with interaction. But to your point, when I was 24, still in the sales cult, the gentleman I worked for, a guy named Tad Guyman, was 28. I was 22 or 3. He was making 400. Shane Rubin, another guy, was 28 or 29, making 650,000. This is Kansas City in the late 80s. I mean, that's probably 2.5 or 3 million. Now it's equivalent to probably 8 million in LA because things are so expensive here. So I was around people that were making money and successful, but also working hard. When you read Think and Grow Rich, when you read Stephen Covey, you learn about goal setting. And this, Christopher, is a little to your question of goal setting, making money. Number one, I set a goal when I was 24. I said, when I'm 33, I want to have a company worth $1 billion. But what I had also learned is, what do I want to do with that money? How would I help other people? Do I want to hang around? What kind of people do I want to be around? So I had a list, an attribute of outcomes. It wasn't just about money. It's, what do I want my outcomes to be? I started Virtual Sellers in 96. My e-commerce company took it public in 99. The day I turned 31, the company was worth $980 million. And I do this a lot with kids in colleges because it's about being specific. I say, I wanted a company worth X billion dollars at 980. I pretty much made it. People are like, yeah, that's great. You're a billionaire. I said, aha. The universe has a funny sense of humor. Universe gives you exactly what you ask for if you work for it. You can't sit around like wanting to win the lottery and have God look down and go, hey, buddy, at least buy a ticket. You have to work for it. But the universe has a funny sense of humor. I had a company worth close to $1 billion four things were wrong with that. Number one, it was a public company. And so I couldn't sell my stock for a year. Any of you that are old enough remember a thing called a tech bubble? I didn't know what a bubble was. So 99 to 2000, the markets are crashing. I can't sell my stock. Two, the tech bubble dropped the stock to 380 million. Three, I had not only a lockup, I had what's called a leak out provision. So having a company worth X was irrelevant to a personal net worth of what I would have personally that I could access, and what would I do with that money for others. And I've got hundreds of stories of people that have asked for things. A friend of mine early on, I want 100 million, I want 100 mil, 100 mil. That was his goal. It was all financial, 100 mil. And one day he woke up and his sister, for his birthday, his 30th birthday, gave him a license plate for his car that said 100 mil. Like, here you go, Mike, you got 100 mil. Oh, well, that wasn't what I asked for. Well, the universe doesn't know. So this concept of making money to me became very amorphous and interesting. And what I do now when I help people, my step one is called Design Your Destiny. The first thing I have people do is, what's a personal financial net worth that you want to be worth for financial independence? Most people don't even know what financial independence means. Oh, paying my bills. That's not independent. Being wealthy. What's wealthy? $3 to a guy in Bangladesh is wealthy. We need to define a personal net worth for a standard of living. You need 10 or 15 times the amount of money saved to live off the interest to maintain a standard of living. That's what money is. Money buys freedom. Money makes you more of what you already are. If you're an ass, you're a big ass with money. If you're insecure, you become insecure. But if you're generous, if you're a nice person, you can do so much more with money for other people. And that's what happens. I'd find people go, oh, well, I don't need that much. I don't want to be greedy. And I think, I want you to be greedy. I want Christopher to make $100, $200 million because he's a good person. But we have to design that destiny. So we say financial freedom is personal net worth to maintain a standard of living. If I had more, what would I do for others? What would you do for your mother and father if they were alive? Would you pay off their house? How would you do it? Would you tell them? Would you not tell them? Would you buy them a car? Would you let them pick it out? Would you deliver it? You know, like, this is spending money that you don't have of what you would do for others. Being specific, it changes the tenor of what we think about money. We're often taught money is bad. Money is a manifestation of how you are as a person. Be a good person. Figure out how you would spend money to help others, and be as detailed and specific as you can. And then the universe can help you find those things. The universe sense of humor is dangerous. Be specific. Again, that's the bullseyes. How targeted and specific can you be? And so, yeah, to Christopher's point, I've made it. I've lost it. I lost it again 3 weeks ago. Some of the people know this. I was hacked on a cyber hack in Barcelona with two guys that stole quite a bit of money from me in crypto. I have them on tape in person. I don't think I'll ever get it back. And I unfortunately think I'm in a fake trade platform that I've got 7 figures at risk on, that I'll probably lose it all. I'm not sure, but working through it. But again, to me, it's the outcome is not the money. It's the journey, the destination, the trying to do something nobody's ever done before, and elevating all the people around as you go down that process.
That's awesome, Stephen. There are so many elements of that, but let's open up for questions. I know Stephen is a busy guy. So anyone have any questions for Stephen, whether from a speaking standpoint, sales standpoint, money standpoint, type in the comments if you have any questions for Stephen. Type in the comments if you have any questions for Stephen. Like I said, as I wait for the questions to come into the comments, Stephen, how important do you think sales skills are to being financially successful?
Well, again, Chris, the pedantic nature of being specific, it depends on how you define sales, right? Because a lot of people would say to me, oh, Stephen, you're a great salesperson. I'm not. I joke, again, I'm not politically correct, politically direct. I'm a glorified business development person. I'm the kind of guy, again, this is Christopher's book, Hunting Elephants. If you guys don't know, like, Hunting Elephants is about finding big companies or rock stars. I remember when Christopher and I were even going through the title. It was about rock stars and billionaires and big companies. I'm the kind of guy that can shoot an elephant in the jungle with a bow and arrow. And that elephant, that big company will turn and look at me. I know how to get their attention. That's business development. That's opening doors. That's generating interest. Sales to me is closing an opportunity, and that is phone call, follow-up, email. Again, the analogy, you can't kill an elephant with a bow and arrow once. It's phone call, follow-up, email. And so sales to me is a lot of communication. Communication becomes with emotional involvement. People make decisions emotionally and defend them logically. And so the sales concept is, how do you get people to like you? How do you engage yourself to them? How do you become not an interesting interesting extrovert, but an interesting introvert? And to me, I've got 10, again, out on my podcast, I have 10 truths of life that I've created. One of them is questions are the keys to the universe. Sales to me is not the guy who talks the most. In my book, it's the guy with the big mouth is not the good salesperson. It's the guy with the big ears. Learning how to ask questions and listen. And again, I keep referencing so many things. In my 10-step program, step 2 is called Whiffoo With 'em. LA is a lot of with them. Most people are driven by what's in it for me. How can I sell this guy? What can I get out of him? If I approach it as Whiffoo, what's in it for you? Then I figure out what's in it for me. Our mindset changes. And I may want to sell somebody my services, but they could really care less about my services. The reason they may want to buy my services is they're trying to send their kid to college. They're trying to make a bonus. They're wondering if what I sell them might allow them to go home earlier to watch their kid play soccer. And so leading with questions to figure out what's important to that other person. What are they trying to accomplish? How can you help them accomplish their goal? Sales becomes an outcome that benefits the other person and indirectly benefits you. And that's where a lot of the mindset and process comes down, is inverting it, even down to simple things. When I teach kids in college, and I do this too, if I had met Trish at an event, I wouldn't say, Trish, you and I met at a conference, or you and I were on a Zoom call and you were very nice and you raised your hand when Chris, it's all, you is all about, if I say I met you, it doesn't work. If I said, Trish, you were on a Zoom call with Christopher, you were so polite. Starting an email with the word you fires off the synapses to engage that person even more in something as simple as an email. It wasn't I met you through Christopher, I saw, it's you were here, you did this, you were very, and again, it's just inverting the process of what's in it for you.
That's phenomenal, Stephen. So Jeff, well, let me see. Gene asked about closing, in that please address closing. So let's say you are listening as you're saying, and let's say as a speaker, let's be specific with speaking, talking about outcomes. All of our speakers want to get booked gigs. If you were you are a speaker, but what are some specific examples that you might share about how you're able to close or convince or convey it to someone that's an event planner that you're the guy to speak? So what are some of the things that you would say or ask?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Christopher. If I try and put myself, if I were back trying to be a public speaker, I would probably, I'm making it up on the fly, I would probably use triplicate of choice and an alternate advance. And again, these are Tom Hopkins. Tom Hopkins, one of the great sales trainers. We trained word for word on objections. So when we were selling life insurance, we trained every single week how to overcome it. Costs too much. I'm happy with my current program. I need to talk to my agent. I mean, word for word, we drilled on those, but triplicate of choice is a great one. Might do something like, if I was trying to close Christopher to have me speak. Christopher, I've done a lot of speaking. I appreciate the opportunity. Usually I'll charge anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 for a small group. I've done upwards of 40 or 50,000 for larger groups. Most of my speaking fees come in right around 20,000 for a group of your size. Within that range is the one that you're comfortable with. And triplicate of choice says low, medium, and high, but the reality is the low isn't your low. The low is what you really normally charge. The medium is, oh my God, if I could get this, and the high is shooting for the moon. If I normally charge 5,000, I don't start with 5,000 in the middle. I start at 5,000 at the bottom. Say, for smaller groups, I might charge 5,000. Usually I'm about 20,000, and there's the occasion where I'm fortunate I've done 50,000, which one fits. Again, that's just one I came up with for triplicate of choice, of trying to put a price point in somebody's mind, but not say, well, what's your budget? Or, oh, well, I charged 10,000, their budget might've been 20. So just throwing numbers out to me are interesting. The art of closing also, though, real quick, Christopher, my favorite one, again, my 10 steps. One of my podcasts is on negotiations. The greatest negotiation tip in the world. Chris Voss is a friend of mine. I think you know Chris too. He wrote the negotiation book. He was the #1 hostage negotiator. And I made a bet with Chris for $1 that I could teach him the best negotiation technique in the world in under a quarter of a second. Now, remember, Chris is a hostage negotiator. He spends hours, interviewing people to get them to release hostages. He's written a book. Like, Stephen, no way. I go, okay, let's do it. The best negotiation technique. And I learned this one earlier. It cost me, if anybody ever wants to know the story, it cost me about $340 million in retrospect when I was 31 or 32. We're going to play along. Can we role play, Christopher, real quick? Does anybody want to learn negotiation techniques just simply? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
A couple people. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I'm selling a car, and I'm going to sell a car to Christopher, and I want $20,000 for it. And Chris, we don't have a lot of time, so just offer me $10,000. We're going to role play. I want you to watch what happens. Hey, Christopher, I've got this great car. It's $20,000. What will you offer me?
Stephen, I only have 10,000.
Okay, I'll take it. What goes through your mind instantly? Could have got it for more. What's wrong with it? I could have got it for less. My response to Christopher's offer was the problem. The greatest negotiation technique ever is called the flinch factor. Let's role play the same thing. Watch the outcome. Watch what happens internally as we process this. Hey, Christopher, the car's 20,000. What would you give me? Offer the same thing.
I only have 10,000.
10. Man, it's my favorite car. I love the color. I didn't drive it that much. I drove it to church on Sundays, and I only go to church twice a year. So I don't really drive that car. I don't know that I could do 20. How about, here's the deal. Even if I ultimately gave Christopher the car for 10,000, he's going to feel better about it. How do we emotionally manifest outcomes in closing? If we flinch, no matter what, the mistake I made was I had a number in my mind for our public company years ago. And the number in my mind, rightly or wrongly, was $300 million. My number was 100 million. The guy offered me 300 as a buyout. This was in our public company. He offered me 300 million. I'm like, I'll take it. Where do I sign? And in retrospect, he's like, oh, well, the guy went behind my back to my two partners and negotiated a deal to vote me out because he knew he could get me for less. If I would have just flinched, would have made all the difference in the world. Even if somebody's offering you more, right? If your normal speaking fee is 10,000 and somebody offers you 15, I've never been paid that much. Flinch, 15. Well, I mean, my fee's usually higher, but I really love you guys. If you can do it for 15, I would absolutely love to do it. Can we commit to that? They're going to feel better about it. And you're like, yeah. Flinch. Like learning these simple techniques are so interesting. And so the question you asked me on closing, to me, closing has such big connotation.
Yeah.
But it's also about making the other person feel better in that same situation. And so flinch factor is a great one.
That's phenomenal. And Stephen, just to end our call, what was that thing you said? It's about with you or with I? What was that thing you said?
Oh, it's called WIFU, WIFM. WIFU. What's in it for you?
Oh, okay.
What's in it for me? Step 2 in my 10 steps, they all sort of build on each other. Step 2 is, how can I figure out what's in it for you? How can I ask good questions, Christopher? Again, I don't know, I don't want to run over on time, but anybody that can see the bullseye over my shoulder, and I can send this to you, it's all out here for free. Step 3 is called the bullseye system. It's called a target. And Robin asked me, how did you come up with the bullseye guy? I used to talk about isolation as a good thing. I like being sort of, controversial. I go, what does isolation mean? People go, oh, it's about being alone and being isolated. I go, no, isolation to me is about being targeted. It's specific focus. How do you isolate on a target? How do you isolate arms one day and legs the next? It's about focus and target. And ultimately I worked with, again, an amateur's, right? A professional's expensive, an amateur's a fortune. I was an amateur for years, just saying isolation. I hired a guy, I think Christopher knows him too, Brent, and we worked on my branding, hired a professional to say, what's in my head? How do I get it out? We came up with the bullseye guy because I wanted something that people could remember me on stage, not some event guy or not a startup guy. I've done 3 public companies. I don't want to be known as a startup guy when I'm trying to be on stage at SALT and Money 2020 and some of the places, Christopher speaks at. I want to be in that element. So I had to elevate my game. I paid a branding. But here's the point. Learning about how to help somebody else, you have to figure out how to help them. What you do is irrelevant. If you're a public speaker, you can talk all day long about what a great speaker you are. It's irrelevant to what you need. And so I developed this system. What's the emotional value of what you do? As a speaker, what's cool about what you do? What's different? What's a differentiator? And I remember Christopher and I, we talked about this and worked on it. Where's that messaging? Then what are the 3 key industries that you speak in, that you want to speak in, or you resonate with the best? Not that you can't be an amazing speaker and speak to everybody, but if you're doing sales closing, is that real estate, which loves to close sales and they'll pay for conferences? Is it insurance? If you're trying to do self-improvement, where are those audiences? So what are the industries? Within those industries, are there certain companies you want to target who you would love to go in and speak to that might pay you, that have a budget? Within that company, who's the buyer of your services? And within there, the buyer might be, Christopher, you would know better than I. You and I talked about, there's somebody that hires you within the company. It might be marketing, it might be sales, it might be HR. Well, then who are the 5 people by name? Therefore, when you're talking to somebody, hey, I'm Stephen Meade. I do a lot of speaking on self-improvement, motivation. I teach people how to close sales in an organic and authentic way. And that's what I do that I think is pretty cool. But I've targeted insurance, financial services, and banking is my core industry, somewhat real estate. Some of the companies I'd love to work with, Keller Williams, Citicorp, Goldman Sachs. It's usually the HR director, but hey, if you happen to know Gary Keller, the CEO of Keller Williams, I'd love to talk to him. Or if you happen to know Chris Terrell, who runs sales training at Goldman, he'd be a great guy that I'd love to speak to. Now, you guys maybe not know that. I just made that up. I said, okay, if I'm going to be a professional speaker, how would I do it? I just positioned myself. But any of you sitting there at the end, hopefully you don't go, oh, Stephen's a great speaker. He's cool. Pat him on the head. You go, oh, Stephen needs Goldman. He wants to meet Chris Terrell. Do I know Chris Terrell? What you do is irrelevant. What you need are people who are going to hire you. It's your responsibility to figure out what that is, who that is, what company, who's the title, what's the name. Therefore, when you talk to people, you can give them ways to help you. And the point of that, Christopher, is, again, step 4 is called deflect, defer, and disclose. I don't answer questions. Step 5, I reverse. What's in it for you? If I'm talking to somebody, I'll reverse this sequence of questions to figure out what they need. People will tell me, oh, I do this and this. I don't understand what hardly anybody does. Like, oh, that's cool. What do your clients love about you? Christopher, when you talk on stage, what do your clients love about you? What do they say about you? That tells me what's cool and emotional. And then I might say, what are the best industries? Where do you have the most success? What are some of the companies you've spoken to? Who's on your target of companies you'd like to speak to? Who do you, I can elicit what Christopher needs in a conversation point to figure out how to help him. And so that what's in it for you is figuring out what somebody needs and whether or not you can help them and how you might fit in that solution to help them accomplish their goals. And again, so with them is what's in it for you. And then the rest just kind of stack on top of each other.
Stephen, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Everyone get some value here. Raise your hand or clap if you did. And obviously, Stephen has his information on the actual screen. So thebullseyeguy.com. Please reach out to him if you want. Stephen, thank you so much for being part of our community.
Yeah, appreciate it. Anybody that wants, contact me directly if you have questions. I'd love to help. And as Christopher said, I have a lot of content out there that I like just putting it out and sharing for people who want to get better. But if anybody ever wants to chat, feel free to reach out. And Christopher, thank you as always. Anything I can do, you're great.
Great. See you soon, Steve. I'll be in Beverly Hills soon.
Okay.
Bye.